Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Simi Salatikun. Northern groups in the country have risen against the emergence of a new terror group, Lukarawa, saying it will not allow any further threat to the safety of life and property of people. The groups have also rejected the claim made by the defense headquarters that some communities welcomed members of Lukarawa in Sokoto and Kebbi State. According to the Director of Defense Media Operations, Major General Edward Papa, the terrorists were initially welcomed by locals who believed they had good intentions and as a result refused to report the movement to the military and security agencies. The defense headquarters confirmed the emergence of the new terror group, saying it originated in the Republic of Niger after the recent coup that disrupted military cooperation between Nigeria and Niger. Buba added Lukarawa terrorists took advantage of the gaps in cooperation between both countries and exploited difficult terrains to make incursions into remote areas in some northwestern states to spread their ideology. He, however, assured that the troops are tracking down terrorists and neutralizing the threat, and that they have ongoing intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance to weaken the terrorists. Meanwhile, the new terror group have attacked Mera town in Auji local government area of Kebbi State, killing at least 15 people and also stealing no fewer than 100 cattle. To further discuss the emergence of this new security threat, I've got a peace and security expert, Jaye Gaskia. It's nice to have you on the program, sir. Now, northern groups in the country have denied the defense headquarters allegations that Lukarawa was invited by the states where they have been identified, that Sokoto and Kebbi. However, what are your thoughts on these assertions and denials made by the northern groups?
Yes, I think that we need to put this in context and put it in the context of both sides, both the military as well as the community. So the assumption of the military is that the communities can, on their own, without being defended, that they can defend themselves against any invading forces. I think that that's a very erroneous perception, to think that there is a way in which communities can resist armed groups that are determined to come into their territory. And the second thing to understand from the perspective of the community is that usually communities globally, human communities generally, but communities in Nigeria in the context of crisis have learned through bitter experience that when you don't have the resources and the ability to withstand, to resist, to keep away or to drive away armed terror groups that are preying on you, that your best bet of minimizing and mitigating the damage and the impact is to either it's not to resist them and then to find a way and a manner to then negotiate some truce with them. And this has happened across most communities where there have been crises. It's not just the new group. It's also in case, for example, in the instances of the challenges with bandits, the armed terror bandit groups, the challenges with the ISWAP and Boko Haram in the northeast as well. That's been the situation. What we have seen is that when communities have felt that they are exposed, they are not defended, they are not secure, and they have become vulnerable to attacks by these groups, by these terror groups, and then it has put them in a position where, in order to secure their own continued existence, they have to come into some form of accommodation with these terror groups. So it's not as if they welcomed them, but it's that they are compelled to, in order to save the whole of the community, to give away certain things.
And according to reports by the defense headquarters, the group has committed quite a lot of atrocities, such as intimidating the people, demanding zakat, stealing cows, and most recently killing 15 people. This has been happening for 2 months without any report from residents until now that the military got wind of their activities. Isn't this really disturbing?
Yeah. So I think that there are also two ways to look at this. One, I do believe that some of the intelligence that the military has gathered, that has led the military to make this open declaration, also came from the community. I do believe that it must have been from sources within the community and the rest of that. So I do believe that. But then again, the question about why this was not done early enough, why it took like 2 months and so on and so forth, it will be down to two things. One will be the nature of the relationship that the community has had with the security authorities, whether it is one that has where they have been able to build trust, where the communities and citizens and residents have been able to trust, security authorities, and if their experience or the experiences of their neighbors has been such that such trust cannot be assumed, then communities would try to take the path of least resistance. They would initially first try to negotiate with these terror groups. They will try to accommodate them, and then it is only when the demands are becoming too high or when they go out of hand that they are then compelled, to actually then, because now they are caught between the devil and the deep blue sea, so they are now compelled to bring in the authorities. So I think that what's more important is to look at is for the military and the entire security architecture agencies to continuously audit their relationship with citizens and with communities, and to particularly to continuously do a confidence and trust audit in terms of their relationship with communities, so that this is going to enable them to know, to be able to be better prepared, one, and then secondly, to actually try to plug those holes with these things. Unfortunately, the military always seems to be the last, and they bear the brunt. And because usually the lack of trust would have emerged with other security agencies that's not the military. So like civil authorities, like maybe policing, civil defense and the rest of that, or even customs and the rest of that, at the border. But then all of this is then translated into the entire security architecture in terms of a lack of trust. So I think that the scenario that we are seeing that is unfolding on the ground is one that is indicative of either a lack of trust and confidence or a breach in trust and confidence.
Now, when cases like this emerge, security agents, particularly the military, always call on citizens to help in terms of intelligence gathering in order to curb the security threats by nefarious groups in their communities. But it's clear that it is not happening as it should. What's your take on this? Where lies the challenge here?
It's basically really also in terms of, like I said earlier, in terms of the nature and the character of the relationship that has historically existed between citizens and the military. Because trust is not something that is built overnight. And a relationship where citizens give intelligence is a relationship that is based on trust and confidence. Trust in the security authorities and confidence that your information and your intelligence will be acted on, and that there will be no repercussion on you. So if that is not happening, then it means that there's a failure, there's a breach, there's a trust deficit in that. And sometimes also the trust deficit that we have with security agencies is essentially also itself an outgrowth of the trust deficit that we have in government and governance in general. So so if communities and citizens are angry with their government, they don't trust their government, they don't trust the governance process, of course, they are likely not going to trust the security apparatus of government institutions, because that's the instrument of force of the government. And so if they don't trust the government, they won't be able to trust this. So everything comes back again to the question of building trust. And you don't build trust simply by just by preaching. You also build trust because trust is an active thing, is an active verb, it's an action verb. Trust is something that is done, that is tangible. So trust comes from, for example, even governance processes. There's something that we say, and we say it as almost like we have come to accept it in this country when we talk about the lack of government presence in many of our communities, and the further away they are from the capital of the state, the less you have government presence. And in many communities, the only government presence are actually security outposts. How can that be your first point of contact with your people? Because already you are securitizing that relationship. Citizens are saying, citizens actually don't see you as helping them. They are seeing you as coming there to enforce law and order, and to criminalize whatever it is that they are doing, and therefore enforce law and order and bring and pacify them. Because if they don't have, if basic services are not being delivered, they don't have access to basic services and the rest of that, and then the only presence they have is a police outpost, is a civil defense outpost, is a customs outpost, and the rest of that, and then occasional military patrols and the rest of that. Then it's not, that in itself is not likely going to build trust. It's going to build, it may inspire fear, but it's not going to inspire trust. And so we need to rethink the concept of trust. And then for the military and the security agencies, I think we need to rethink the question of this thing about this core of civil military relations. When we talk about we are appealing to citizens for intelligence, I think that's the wrong way to go about it. Because look, our relationship, the security sector's relationship with citizens should not be an extractive one. It should not be a relationship where something is just to extract intelligence from it. So in other words, you are converting citizens into spies, into people who how do you call it now? People who go and reveal what their neighbors are doing and all of that, and so on and so forth. So you can get information if you have a good relationship, a working relationship with the community. You will get information from the community that you then process into intelligence without turning individual members of the community into informants for the security agents. And we all know how every community hates informants. And so on and so forth. So rather than have that kind of relationship where 1-2 persons are cultivated as informants, why don't you have a relationship with the whole community where you can have conversations about community security openly with everybody, and then the information that is gotten from those kind of open interactions and conversations then becomes the basis where you draw your intelligence from. And if you cultivate that kind of relationship, then community as a community can actually give you information without thinking that they are without making them feel that they are informing on others, because then this is something that they are doing collectively. So I think that also needs to change. It shouldn't be just that one-way extractive process.
Well, one detail stands out in the report by the Defense Headquarters, and it is the fact that this group emerged after the disruption of military cooperation between Nigeria and the Niger Republic following the coup in that country. Now, that's despite the renewed security pact between both nations back in August. What are your thoughts on this worrisome development? Do you think that it can get any worse?
Now, this is the area where this is a point and the area where we really then need to be a bit more emphatic and actually more critical. And objectivity requires that we should be very critical and hard on this particular point, because the point is this: look, when the coup happened, and we were having all of those the coups in Niger, Mali, and all of them, when they were, and particularly Niger, happened, and we were having all of those conversations at the political level of ECOWAS. There were also conversations at the military level of ECOWAS. In fact, there were talks about whether to have a military response and the rest of that. So part of what ought to have been put in place and to have been done that time is also a critical analysis of what from a security analysis, a security threat assessment in terms of the fallout the coup and the fallout of the disagreements that are happening at the political level, at the security level. Because if this analysis had been done, then it should have been expected that there will now be, a gap that these terror groups can then exploit in terms of expanding their territorial, their areas for operations, and therefore also moving south of the border into Nigeria. So that ought to have been expected if thorough security threat analysis of that context and that situation was done at that time, and if a continuous assessment was being undertaken, and what would have been needed was that to have developed a response plan to that, so a mitigative plan to that. So how do you mitigate that if you know that this is going to sour relationships, and that if this were to sour relationships, these are the possible fallouts, then what should be your own mitigative response in terms of so how do you deploy do you actually even codedly deploy special operations troops along those borders just to keep to heighten security along those borders? Do you increase and improve your intelligence gathering mechanism in the communities around those areas? And on the other side of the border, do you continue to sustain your intelligence relationship even with the Nigerian authorities, because that's even countries that are at war maintain such a secret contacts, so that they can continue to and then it speaks a lot in terms of about our own capabilities. So if we have had this relationship with Niger, with all the other countries that border us, these security and relationships there, one would expect that we should have assets that would be operating in those countries regardless of the nature of our relationship, with undercover assets, and so we would have been able to. It should have been possible for us to be better prepared for this outcome, and so that's a big failure of security preparedness in this instance.
Well, Mr. Ajayi Gaskia, peace and security expert, thank you very much, sir, for sharing your insights and thoughts. We'll go on a short break, and when we return, the discussion will continue. Just stay with us. Welcome back. We're still discussing the emergence of the new terror group Lukarawa, and my next guest is former director of the Department of State Services, Mike Ejiofor. Thank you for your time, sir. Now, over the years, since terror threats began, emerging, Nigeria's northern states have become the safe haven of increasingly active terrorist groups. What factors do you think are responsible for this?
Well, so many factors. One is economic, another one is religious fundamentalism or ideology. A combination of those factors. You see, we agree that the economic downturn is affecting everybody, and this will lead the communities to raise funds, and they pursue their religious ideology. So these are the two basic factors responsible for the upsurge and the operation of the terrorists in those areas.
Now, this new group, Lukarawa, is set to be in the mold of Boko Haram, which remains one of the most dangerous extremist groups in West Africa so far. Do you think that Nigeria's security agencies can effectively address this new security threat?
I can tell you that the Nigerian security forces will do everything possible within their powers to check the activities of this Lukarawa. They are not beyond. My happiness is that they have not taken a very strong hold like Boko Haram in the Northeast. They have not taken a strong hold because, they were initially dislodged in 2018. And coming up now with the new emergence of these groups, I think the government should be able to tackle it, especially now that it's restricted in Sokoto, possibly extension to Kebbi State.
Of course, the emergence of this new terrorist group has created new fears for Nigerians who are still reeling from the attacks by Boko Haram. Now, what solutions do you recommend, to tackle this challenge?
Well, now that they are not taking strong foothold in those areas, I think we should rely more on technology, employment of drones, getting adequate intelligence, locating where they are, and possibly using air approach, like the Air Force drones, get them uprooted before, because the information is that they are even recruiting locals now to join them. And this should not be allowed to take place. We should, as a matter of urgency, take decisive action to uproot them and stop the operations within that area.
Finally, the 2024 defense budget was increased to 1.6 trillion naira, which is 5.7% of the total budget. Now, under former President Muhammadu Buhari, yet insecurity grew worse despite the increase in this budgetary allocation for security in the country. Should we say that the funds appropriated for security is not enough, or, not well expended?
Well, I can tell you that budgeting for security can never be enough. But you agree with me that there's improvement in budgetary allocation. Secondly, we are not lacking in intelligence for the operations to take place. But the person providing the intelligence cannot at the same time be an action agency. So it's also left for the action agencies to be well equipped to respond positively to the situations on ground. By this I mean, you can appropriate money for whatever reason, and at the end of the day, it's not properly utilized. There is corruption everywhere. So I think the National Assembly, unfortunately too, does not carry out its oversight function properly due to corruption. They want their own money from the security agencies. They want to, and the little, we don't get 100% appropriation release. And the one that is released, Nigerian factor, of course, there must be some obstacles on the way in terms of purchase of quality materials like drones and armaments. So the pervasive corruption is not only in Nigeria, it's also in the security subsector. So the possibility of changing or misappropriating some of these funds released is still there. So I think the National Assembly, since security is very, very paramount, must intensify its oversight function by giving security to do what is right and do the oversight to ensure that the appropriate equipment are bought and properly supervised.
Well, Nigerians have no choice but to rely on the assurance from the defense headquarters that Lukarawa operations will be neutralized before spreading to other states in the country. Hopefully not. Mr. Mike Ejiofor, former director at the Department of State Services, DSS, we really appreciate your time with us. That's how much we can take on this episode of the program. We'll see you again next time. Bye for now.